Mariner Books and HarperAudio present Sunrise with Seamonsters by Paul Theroux, performed by Charlie Anson. To my parents, Albert and Anne Theroux, with love. Words, words, words. There were no deeds, interrupted Rudin. No deeds? What kind of deeds? Supporting a blind old granny and all her family by your hard work. Remember Priazhantsev? There's a deed for you. Yes, but good words can also be deeds. Ivan Turgenev, Rudin. Translated from the Russian by Marcel Theroux. Introduction. For the past 20 years, I have been writing with both hands. I thought, I'll write a few more pieces and then I'll work on my novel. I never dared to entertain great hopes for my novels, or my travel books either. But I always expected to be fairly paid for my journalism, which these 50 pieces are. This was specific labor of short duration that would finance my more ambitious, or at least more time-consuming, books. I assumed that one day I would gather some of these pieces together, but I never guessed it would be other than a motley collection, and certainly not a book in any symmetrical sense. This was, mainly, writing for money, paying bills. I think I was wrong. For one thing, the money for this work was not much. I had thought of including the fee I got for each piece. The Killing of Hastings Banda, Esquire, 1971, $600. Malaysia, Vogue, 1973, $70. A Circuit of Corsica, The Atlantic, 1978, $350, and so forth, as an instructive joke and a severe warning to anyone who intended to make a living this way. But then I decided that it would distract attention from the pieces themselves, and the price tags might demean them. Anyway, these pieces hardly paid my bills. It was my books that saved me from dropping back into the schoolroom, or into the even more dire profession of writing applications for grants and fellowships. My creative writing project is a novel about. And as for the question of symmetry, I hope this book is something more than a rag-bag anthology. I have waited this long so that it might have the proportions of a better book, 4 dimensions, and even a kind of narrative. The early pieces sound a little forced and clumsy to me. I was 22 or 23, and if the prose is harshly old-fashioned, then so was the setting. I wrote most of the early pieces in Africa, the old Africa with muddy roads and dusty faces. Yes, master, the elderly houseboys would say. This was Malawi, an ex-British protectorate that was to turn into a franker kind of black dictatorship. It was not merely that there were no African members of the Blantyre Club, or that I had a cook and a gardener and they earned about $15 a month between them. And it was not the signs in the butcher shops advertising boys' meat, cheap mutton you were supposed to buy for your houseboy. No, stranger and more startling, it was the sight of African women who fell to their knees in the dust by the roadside as I passed on a motorcycle or a car, because of my white face. But it was whiter for having seen that. It was the Africa of leper colonies and home leave. And it was not regarded as inhuman, but only bad manners, for a white person to say, "Exterminate the brutes." I remember another day in Mozambique, in a terrible little country town, getting a haircut from a Portuguese barber. He had come to the African bush from rural Portugal to be a barber. What was so unusual about that? Mozambique had been a colony for hundreds of years. The first Portuguese claimed it in 1489. If I had asked, I'm sure this barber would have said he was following in the footsteps of...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?